If you've spent serious cash on a high-end mesh chair or motorized desk, why do you still end up with a stiff lower back and afternoon fatigue? We've been sold a specific promise that if we just find the exact right equipment, we can lock our bodies into a state of perfect posture. But human physiology requires supported movement rather than a single static position to freeze in. As we spend more money on premium gear, we subconsciously expect the chair to do the work. We stop moving. When we buy equipment without changing habits, the result flatlines with zero net biomechanical benefit. To solve the problem, we need to look at what mandatory features a chair must have, the metabolic realities of using a standing desk, and the daily routines you have to adopt. Because your best posture is always your next posture. Equipment merely exists to make that transition easier. Let's start with the cornerstone of the home office, the premium ergonomic chair. The essential inputs here aren't about plush cushioning. You need adjustable seat depth, leaving 2 to 3 fingers of space between the seat edge and the back of your knees, and dynamic lumbar support. When dialed in correctly, these adjustments match your natural spinal curve and unweight your upper body, taking the pressure directly off your lower back and hips. But there is a catch. If you lock that chair at a rigid 90-degree angle and sit motionless for 8 hours, you will still experience postural fatigue. The habit required to make the chair work is active readjustment. You have to periodically utilize a 100 to 110-degree recline to actually decompress your lumbar discs. This diagram contrasts relaxed shoulders against common mistakes like armrests that are too high or wide, which strain your neck. In profile, the target geometry is clear: an 80 to 100-degree elbow angle and a 90 to 120-degree angle between torso and thighs. Treat your chair as a tool to be piloted. Using it as a static mold ignores the very engineering you paid for. The second major tool is the motorized standing desk. The physical setup demands precision to keep your forearms parallel to the floor. The desk surface needs to rest exactly at your elbow height, maintaining that 80 to 100-degree angle. This chart shows the dramatic metabolic impact of taking a break from sitting. Standing for a few hours after a meal can reduce your blood sugar spike by up to 43%, while improving systemic insulin resistance. Yet, continuous standing introduces its own problems. It places a high static load on your feet and legs, creating fatigue and restricting circulation if you overdo it. The behavioral discipline required here is alternating. You need to shift between sitting and standing every 30 to 60 minutes. And your peripherals matter just as much. Your monitor should sit 20 to 40 inches away, with the top line of text right at or slightly below eye level. Your mouse must stay close to the keyboard. If you reach for it and anchor your wrist to the desk, you increase pressure on the carpal tunnel. Mouse movement needs to come from the forearm. Optimizing your vertical desk height and your horizontal reach prevents joint strain and computer vision syndrome. That brings us to the cheapest and most critical intervention of all, the movement routine. The input is simple. For every hour you spend working, you need to break for 5 to 10 minutes for targeted stretches and visual resets. This means performing specific wrist flexion and extension exercises, like pressing your palms together and slowly lowering your wrist to the table to stretch the forearms. It also means following the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, look at an object at least 20 feet away for 20 seconds. These brief windows of activity restore joint lubrication, relieve muscle tension, and prevent repetitive strain injuries. The trade-off is that it temporarily disrupts your workflow. It relies entirely on your personal accountability and a good timer. These routines are what make the rest of your investment work. Without them, even a $3,000 setup eventually leads to joint strain. To make this actionable, we need to map these interventions against your real-world budget and physical state. If you are in the budget-conscious, preventative quadrant, do not stress over buying a $1,500 chair. You can save your money. Stick with a basic office chair that fits you. Grab a cheap laptop stand to elevate your screen, and keep your elbows supported. Your trade-off is vigilance. You have to be hyper-consistent about your 5-minute hourly stretching routines to compensate for the lack of dynamic hardware. On the other hand, if you are dealing with chronic pain and have a higher budget to deploy, your approach changes. Invest in a highly adjustable chair with variable seat depth and targeted lumbar support, along with a sit-stand converter. You need the hardware to help heal inflamed tissue. Your trade-off is utilizing those features. You must actively recline to 110 degrees and alternate between sitting and standing every 45 minutes. The core philosophy remains the same across the board. Equipment buys you options, but your habits buy you results. Ergonomics succeeds when it makes changing your physical position frictionless.